The fluorescent lights of Seoul Metropolitan Pediatric Emergency hummed with that particular frequency that had become the soundtrack of my life. 17 hours into a double shift, my scrubs were wrinkled, my ponytail was falling apart, and my feet had long since gone numb inside my nursing shoes. The scent of antiseptic clung to my skin like a second layer, mixing with the faint metallic undertone that always accompanied trauma nights. I checked the vitals on the patient in Bay 4, a 7-year-old with a broken arm from a playground accident, his mother hovering anxiously beside him. The monitor beeped in steady rhythm, a sound as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. After 6 years in pediatric emergency care, I had learned to read children like charts. Their breathing patterns, the color of their skin, the way they held their bodies when they were hiding pain. "Eunice, we have an incoming," my colleague Ji Hye called from the nurses' station. Unidentified male child, approximately 5 years old, found by police near Gangnam Station. Multiple contusions, possible head trauma. No parents, no identification. My heart clenched the way it always did when a child arrived alone. I stripped off my gloves and grabbed a fresh pair, already moving toward the entrance. The ambulance doors burst open, and 2 paramedics wheeled in a gurney carrying a small figure that made my breath catch. He was tiny, almost fragile-looking, with dark hair matted with what looked like dried blood on one side. His eyes were closed, his small hands limp at his sides. But what struck me most was the quality of his clothing. Expensive designer brands that I recognized only because I had once dreamed of affording such things for my own future children someday. BP 90/60, pulse 102, the paramedic rattled off. Responsive but disoriented. No wallet, no phone, no school uniform identification. Police found him wandering near the subway entrance, crying. I took over immediately, my hands moving with practiced efficiency as I assessed his injuries. A laceration above his left eyebrow, already clotting. Bruising along his right arm and shoulder, consistent with a fall or being grabbed roughly. His pupils were equal and reactive, a small mercy. "Hey there, little one," I murmured in the soft voice I reserved for frightened children. "Can you hear me? Can you tell me your name?" His eyes fluttered open, and I found myself looking into the most beautiful dark eyes I had ever seen on a child. There was something ancient in that gaze, something that spoke of experiences no 5-year-old should know. "Minho," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "My name is Minho." "That's a wonderful name," I said, gently cleaning the wound on his forehead. "I'm Yuna. I'm going to take care of you, okay? Can you tell me where your Oma or Appa are?" His lower lip trembled, and a single tear escaped down his cheek. "I don't know. The bad men came. They were yelling. Someone told me to run." My hands stilled for just a moment before I resumed my work. Bad men, yelling. A child in designer clothes found wandering alone near one of Seoul's busiest districts. Every instinct honed by years of emergency nursing screamed that something was deeply wrong here. "You're safe now," I promised him, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "I won't let anyone hurt you." The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of medical care, police interviews, and growing attachment that I knew was unprofessional, but couldn't seem to prevent. Minho had no identification in any system. His fingerprints matched nothing. His photographs circulated through missing persons databases returned 0 results. It was as if he had appeared from nowhere, a ghost child in a city of millions. I found myself volunteering for extra shifts just to be near him. When he woke screaming from nightmares, I was there to hold him. When he refused to eat the hospital food, I brought him homemade juke from the cafeteria auntie who had a soft spot for sad cases. When he asked me to read him stories, I stayed past my shift, my voice growing hoarse as I worked through an entire collection of Korean folktales. "Yuna si," Dr. Park said on the 3rd morning, his expression troubled. "We've had an inquiry. Someone is coming to claim the boy. Relief and something sharper, Fear, perhaps, or possessiveness, warred in my chest. His parents? His father, apparently. He'll be here within the hour. Dr. Park hesitated. I should warn you. The inquiry came through. Unusual channels. Very high level. The kind of channels that make hospital administrators nervous. I didn't understand what he meant until 53 minutes later, when the elevator doors opened and 3 men in black suits stepped onto our floor. They moved with the coordinated precision of a military unit, their eyes scanning every corner, every exit, every potential threat. And behind them walked a man who made the air in my lungs crystallize into ice. He was tall for a Korean man, broad-shouldered beneath a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. His white dress shirt was open at the collar, revealing the edge of what looked like a tattoo climbing his neck. His face was all sharp angles and controlled intensity, handsome in the way that beautiful predators are handsome, the kind of beauty that warned of danger. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Dark, cold, utterly devoid of warmth. They swept over the ward with the assessment of someone cataloging threats, not searching for a lost child. Where is my son? His voice was low, commanding, accented with the particular Seoul dialect of old money and older power. I stepped forward before I could think better of it, placing myself between him and Minho's room. I'm the nurse who has been caring for him. Before I let you near that child, I need to see identification and proof of parentage. The silence that followed was deafening. The 3 men in suits tensed visibly. One of them actually reached inside his jacket before a slight gesture from the man in charcoal stopped him. Those cold eyes turned to me, really seeing me for the first time. I watched something flicker in their depths, surprise perhaps, or a reluctant spark of interest. You're either very brave or very foolish, he said softly. Do you know who I am? I don't care if you're the president of Korea, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. That little boy has been through trauma. He's been alone and scared for 3 days. I will not hand him over to anyone who cannot prove they have the right to take him. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. He reached into his jacket, and I tensed, but he only withdrew a leather wallet. He flipped it open to reveal a photograph. A younger version of himself, smiling, with a beautiful woman and a toddler who was unmistakably Minho. Kang Jae-sung, he said, and that boy is Kang Minho, my son. The name hit me like a physical blow. Even I, who spent my life in the insulated world of hospitals and healing, had heard whispers of Kang Jae-sung, the ghost of Gangnam, the man who controlled half the city's underground economy with an iron fist and left no traces. I had just challenged the leader of the Korean Mafia to his face. And somehow, impossibly, I was still breathing. The days following Minho's discharge should have marked the end of my involvement with the Kang family. I had done my job. The child was reunited with his father. Case closed, file archived, move on to the next patient who needed my care. Except I couldn't stop thinking about the look in Minho's eyes when Jae-sung had entered his hospital room. Not joy at seeing his father. Not relief at being found. Fear. Pure, unadulterated terror. The boy had actually shrunk back against the pillows, his small fingers clutching at my sleeve with desperate strength. Yunashi, he had whispered, his voice trembling. Don't let him take me. Please. I want to stay with you. Jae-sung's expression hadn't changed, but I had seen something fracture behind those cold eyes. A micro-expression of pain so brief I might have imagined it. He hadn't approached his son, hadn't embraced him, hadn't offered any of the comfort a father should provide to a traumatized child. Pack his things, was all he had said, his voice flat. We're leaving. That had been 6 days ago. 6 days of going through the motions of my job while my mind replayed that scene over and over. 6 days of checking my phone obsessively as if somehow Minho might find a way to contact me. 6 days of feeling like I had failed the one patient who needed me most. On the 7th day, they came for me. I was leaving the hospital after a 12-hour shift, exhausted and distracted, when a black sedan pulled up to the curb beside me. The rear window rolled down, and a face I recognized appeared, one of the men in suits from the hospital. "Miss Yuna," he said, his tone polite but unmistakably a command. "Mr. Kang would like a word with you. Please get in the car." Every survival instinct I possessed screamed at me to run. But I thought of Minho, of his small hand clutching my sleeve, and I found myself sliding onto the leather seat before my rational mind could object. The drive took us out of the city proper, through increasingly exclusive neighborhoods, until we reached a compound that looked more like a fortress than a home. High walls topped with cameras, guards at every entrance. The kind of security that spoke of enemies numerous enough to require an army. Inside, the mansion was a study in contrasts. Traditional Korean architecture, married to modern luxury. Priceless antiques sat beside contemporary art. The scent of incense lingered beneath notes of expensive cologne and fresh-cut flowers. Everything was beautiful, perfect, and utterly cold. Jae-sung was waiting in a study lined with books, standing before floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a meticulously maintained garden. He had removed his jacket, and his white shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with the edges of more tattoos. "You came," he said without turning. "I wasn't certain you would." Your man didn't exactly phrase it as an invitation. He turned then, and I was struck again by the force of his presence. Up close, in the softer light of his home, I could see details I had missed at the hospital. The faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his jaw that spoke of constant vigilance, the way his hands remained slightly loose at his sides, ready for violence at any moment. "Minho hasn't spoken since we brought him home," he said, the words seeming to cost him something. "He won't eat. He won't sleep. He sits in his room and stares at the wall. The only word he said in 6 days is your name." My heart clenched. He was traumatized. He needs professional help. A child psychologist. Someone trained in... "I've brought in 3 specialists," Jae-sung interrupted. "He won't speak to any of them. He barely acknowledges their presence." His jaw tightened. "But he asks for you. Every night, before he finally passes out from exhaustion, he asks when Yuna-si is coming back." I stared at him, trying to reconcile this information with what I thought I knew about this man. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to come work for me." He said it simply, as if offering a position as a nanny to a stranger was the most natural thing in the world. "As Minho's private caregiver. You would live here, have access to everything you need, and be compensated far beyond what the hospital pays you. You want me to leave my career to become a live-in caretaker for a child I barely know? I want my son to speak again." For the first time, something human cracked through his controlled facade. I want him to eat without being forced. I want him to sleep without screaming. He took a step closer, and I fought the urge to retreat. "You did something in those 3 days, Miss Yuna. You reached him in a way no one else has been able to. I'm not a man who begs, but I am asking you to help my son." I should have refused. Every logical part of my brain was cataloging the red flags. The isolation, the power imbalance, the fact that this man had literally ordered his subordinate to collect me off the street. I would be completely at his mercy in this fortress, cut off from my normal life, my friends, my support system. But then I heard it. A small voice, drifting down from somewhere above us. "Yuna-si? Yuna-si, are you there?" Minho appeared at the top of the staircase, still in his pajamas though it was late afternoon, his face pale and thin from days of not eating. When he saw me, his entire being seemed to light up from within. He flew down the stairs with the reckless abandon of a child who had found something precious and threw himself into my arms with enough force to make me stagger. I caught him automatically, my hands remembering the weight of him from those 3 days in the hospital. "You came back," he sobbed against my shoulder. "You came back, you came back, you came back." Over his head, I met Ye-sung's eyes, and I saw something there that made my decision for me. Not threat, not demand, but desperation. The desperation of a father who had no idea how to reach his own child. "I'll stay," I heard myself say. "For Minho. I'll stay." I didn't see the slight relaxation in Jae-sung's shoulders, the breath he released, the way his eyes closed for just a moment in something that might have been relief. I was too busy holding a broken little boy who had somehow, in the space of 3 days, carved a permanent place in my heart. The first month in the Kang household passed in a blur of establishing routines, learning the layout of the massive compound, and slowly coaxing Minho back from whatever dark place his trauma had taken him. I learned the names of the household staff: Mrs. Cho, the cook who treated Minho like a beloved grandson; Mr. Park, the head of security who watched my every move with suspicious eyes; and Hyunwoo, Jae-sung's right-hand man who seemed to exist in the shadows, always present, never fully visible. I also learned the rhythms of Jae-sung himself, though he remained largely absent from our daily life. He left before dawn and returned after Minho's bedtime, a ghost in his own home. When our paths did cross, our interactions were brief and businesslike. Updates on Minho's progress, adjustments to his care routine, nothing more. But I noticed things. The way Jae-sung would pause outside Minho's door at night, listening to me read bedtime stories. The toys that appeared in Minho's room, expensive and carefully chosen, with no explanation or acknowledgement. The flowers that showed up in my quarters weekly, always my favorite, white lilies, though I had never told anyone my preference. I was beginning to understand that Jae-sung loved his son desperately. He simply had no idea how to show it. "Tell me about his mother," I asked Mrs. Cho one afternoon while Minho napped. The older woman's hand stilled on the vegetables she was chopping, and silence stretched between us. "Mrs. Kang was a good woman," she said finally, her voice careful. "Kind. Warm. She was the only one who could make the master smile." She resumed chopping, the rhythm slower now, heavy with memory. "She died when Minho was 3. An accident, they said. A car bomb meant for the master." My blood ran cold. "Someone tried to kill Jae-sung, and his wife died instead." Mrs. Cho nodded, not meeting my eyes. "After that, the master changed. He sent Minho away, to his grandmother's, to boarding schools, anywhere but here. He said it was for the boy's protection. But I think..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "You think he couldn't bear to look at his son because he reminded him of what he lost?" She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. That night, after Minho was asleep, I found myself wandering the mansion's corridors, unable to rest. My feet carried me to the east wing, where Jae-sung's private study was located. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Answers, perhaps, or simply a better understanding of the man who held our fates in his hands. The door was slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the darkened hallway. I should have turned back. Instead, I peered through the gap and saw something that made my heart clench painfully. Jae-sung sat in a leather armchair, a glass of amber liquid untouched beside him. In his hands, he held a photograph, the same one he had shown me at the hospital. His thumb traced the face of the woman, of his wife, with a tenderness that seemed impossible from a man known for his brutality. Her name was Soyeon. His voice made me jump. He hadn't looked up, hadn't acknowledged my presence, yet he knew I was there. She used to say I had 2 lives, the one I led in daylight, and the one I came home to at night. She made me believe I could keep them separate forever. I pushed the door open fully, stepping into the room. What happened? He was quiet for a long moment, and I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set the photograph aside and lifted his eyes to mine. The pain in them was ancient, bottomless. I was arrogant. I thought I could protect her from my world. Instead, I made her a target. He rose from the chair, moving to the window, his back to me. When she died, something in me died with her. I looked at Minho and saw only her face, her eyes, her smile. It was unbearable. So I did what I do best. I removed myself from the situation. You abandoned him. The words came out harsher than I intended. He was 3 years old, and he had just lost his mother, and you sent him away. Jae-sung turned, and I expected anger. Instead, I saw only resignation. Yes, I abandoned him. Because every time I looked at him, I remembered that I was the reason his mother was dead. And I convinced myself that he was better off without me. Safer. He's not safer, I said, thinking of the nightmares that still plagued Minho. The way he flinched at loud noises. The invisible wounds that no amount of expensive therapy could fully heal. He's broken. He's been broken for 2 years, wondering why his father doesn't love him. I love him. The words were fierce, raw. I love him more than my own life. But love isn't enough in my world. Love is a weakness that enemies exploit. Love is what got his mother killed. So you've decided to never let yourself love again? To keep everyone at arm's length so you can't be hurt? I stepped closer, driven by something I didn't fully understand. That's not protection, Jae-sung. That's cowardice. The silence that followed was electric. I had just called one of the most dangerous men in Korea a coward to his face. For the second time. But instead of anger, something like wonder crossed his features. No one speaks to me like that. No one has dared in years. Maybe that's your problem, I shot back. You're surrounded by people who fear you, and fear isn't the same as loyalty. It's not the same as love. He moved then, closing the distance between us until I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, smell the whiskey and sandalwood that clung to his skin. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I refused to step back. You're not afraid of me, he observed, something almost like curiosity in his voice. Should I be? Most would say yes. I'm not most people. The corner of his mouth curved, not quite a smile, but the closest I had seen. No, you're not. He reached out, and I tensed, but he only tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, the touch feather light. You're something else entirely, Yuna. Something I haven't encountered before. I should have pulled away, should have reminded us both that this was inappropriate, dangerous, impossible. Instead, I stood there, caught in the gravity of his presence, feeling something shift between us that I wasn't ready to name. Minho needs his father, I finally said, my voice unsteady. Not your money, not your protection, not the toys that appear in his room without explanation. He needs you, present, involved, showing him that he matters. Jae-sung's expression shuddered, and I thought I had lost him. Then he nodded slowly, as if coming to a decision. Teach me, he said quietly. Teach me how to be his father again. The weeks that followed were a revelation. True to his word, Jae-sung began carving out time from his schedule to spend with Minho. Awkward at first, stilted conversations between a man who had forgotten how to be a father and a boy who had learned to expect nothing from him. I served as translator between them, interpreting Minho's silences and Jae-sung's clumsy attempts at connection. Slowly, painstakingly, a bridge began to form. I was there the first time Minho voluntarily reached for his father's hand during a walk in the garden. I watched Jae-sung's face transform, just for a moment, into something vulnerable and odd. I was there when Jae-sung read a bedtime story for the first time, his deep voice stumbling over the silly sound effects that came naturally to me, Minho giggling at his father's attempts. I was there when Minho had a nightmare, and instead of calling for me, he called for his appa. When Jae-sung appeared in the doorway, uncertain and afraid, I guided him to his son's bedside, showed him how to hold the boy, how to whisper reassurances until the trembling stopped. And somewhere in the midst of all this healing, something else was happening, something I tried desperately to ignore. I was falling in love with Jae-sung Kang. It crept up on me in small moments, the way his eyes softened when he looked at Minho, the sound of his rare laughter, the vulnerability he showed only to me in the quiet hours when the household slept. I learned the geography of his face, the history written in his scars, the weight of responsibility he carried without complaint. I learned that he played piano beautifully, a secret skill from a childhood before the violence claimed him, that he read philosophy and poetry in his few moments of peace, that he donated anonymously to orphanages and hospitals across the city, trying perhaps to balance some cosmic ledger of good and evil. He was not the monster his reputation suggested, but he was not innocent either. I watched him take calls in sharp, clipped tones that spoke of threats and consequences. I saw the blood on his knuckles that he tried to wash away before I noticed. I understood that the empire he commanded was built on things I could never fully accept. And yet, "You're in too deep," Hyunwoo said one afternoon, appearing beside me as I watched Jae-sung chase Minho around the garden, the boy's laughter ringing through the air. "I've seen the way you look at him. I don't know what you mean." He smiled, the expression almost gentle. "I've known Jae-sung since we were boys. I've watched him lose everything that mattered to him. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." My heart stuttered. "He doesn't—" "He does." Hyunwoo's gaze was steady, knowing. "The question is, what you're going to do about it." The answer came that evening, in a way I never could have anticipated. Jae-sung found me in the library, where I was curled up with a book, enjoying a rare moment of solitude. He had changed from his business attire into something more casual, dark slacks and a white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar as he preferred when he was home. "Minho is asking for you," he said, leaning against the doorframe in a way that drew my attention to the breadth of his shoulders. "He wants you to say goodnight. I'll go up in a moment." I turned a page I wasn't reading, hyper-aware of his presence. He didn't leave. Instead, he crossed the room and sat in the armchair across from me, close enough that our knees almost touched. "We need to talk, Yuna." My stomach tightened. "About Minho?" "About us." The word hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility and danger. I set my book aside, meeting his gaze directly. "There is no us," I said carefully. "I'm Minho's caregiver. You're my employer. Is that what you want?" His voice was low, intense. To be just my employee? Every rational part of my brain screamed warnings. This was the Mafia boss of Seoul. This was a man with blood on his hands, enemies around every corner, a world I could never belong to. Getting involved with him would be professional suicide. Personal suicide. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see the feared crime lord. I saw the man who had learned to hold his son again. The man who asked me about my day and remembered every answer. The man who left lilies on my nightstand and pretended not to notice when I smiled at them. "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "I know what I should want. I should want to leave, to go back to my normal life, to pretend this was just a job. But I don't think I can." The truth escaped before I could stop it. "I don't think I can walk away from you. Either of you." Jae-sung's hand reached out, his fingers intertwining with mine. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm, into my chest, settling somewhere near my heart. "I can't offer you safety," he said quietly. "I can't offer you a normal life. My world is dangerous, brutal, unforgiving. There will always be threats. There will always be enemies. I know. I can't promise that history won't repeat itself, that you won't become a target the way Soyeon did." "I know," I repeated. "Then what can I offer you?" The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. What do I have that could possibly be worth the risk? I squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses, the strength, the barely perceptible tremble beneath the surface. "You can offer me truth," I said. "You can offer me partnership. You can offer me a place in your life and in Minho's life." I lifted our joined hands, pressing my lips to his knuckles. "You can offer me you, Ye-sung, exactly as you are, with all your darkness and all your light." He moved then, swift and certain, pulling me from my chair and into his arms. For a long moment, we simply held each other, two souls clinging together against the storms that surrounded us. "I will spend every day earning your trust," he murmured against my hair, "every day proving that you made the right choice. I will protect you with everything I am. I will love you with everything I have left to give." "I know you will," I whispered back. "I've already seen it." When he kissed me, it felt like coming home to a place I had never been before, familiar and strange all at once, terrifying and exhilarating. His arms around me felt like safety, despite everything I knew about the danger he represented. Somewhere above us, Minho was waiting for his goodnight story. But for this one moment, we allowed ourselves to exist only for each other. Two hearts beating in uncertain harmony, embarking on a journey neither of us had planned, but neither could resist. The path ahead was shrouded in darkness, but together, we would find the light. The months that followed were the happiest of my life, threaded through with an undercurrent of constant vigilance that never quite allowed me to fully relax. I learned to read the signals of danger, the tightening of security, the hushed phone calls, the nights when Jae-sung didn't come home until dawn, returning with shadows in his eyes that he refused to explain. But I also learned the rhythms of joy. Minho's laughter as he ran through the garden, his small hand tucked trustingly in mine. The quiet dinners where Jae-sung would reach across the table to touch my fingers, a gesture so simple yet so profound. The mornings when I woke wrapped in his arms, feeling, for the first time in my life, completely and utterly cherished. My 28th birthday arrived without fanfare. I had mentioned the date once, months ago, and assumed it had been forgotten in the chaos of daily life. But when I came downstairs that morning, I found the dining room transformed into a garden of white lilies, hundreds of them, their fragrance filling the air like a physical embrace. Minho stood in the center, bouncing with barely contained excitement. "Do you like it, Eunice? Appa said white lilies are your favorite." I turned to find Jae-sung leaning against the doorframe, watching me with that soft expression he reserved for private moments. "Happy birthday," he said simply. It was the most beautiful gesture anyone had ever made for me. Not because of the expense, though I knew it must have been considerable, but because of what it represented. He had been paying attention. He remembered. He cared. That night, after Minho was asleep, Jae-sung led me to his private study and handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a ring. Not an engagement ring, he assured me, not yet, but a band of white gold set with small diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. "This was my grandmother's," he said, sliding it onto my right hand. "She gave it to my mother, who gave it to Soyeon. Now it belongs to you." His eyes held mine with fierce intensity. "You are my family now, Yuna, in every way that matters." I threw my arms around him, burying my face in his shoulder to hide the tears that spilled down my cheeks. For a girl who had grown up with nothing, who had learned early that love was conditional and fleeting. This unconditional acceptance felt like a miracle I didn't deserve. But miracles, I was learning, came with a price. The first sign of trouble came 3 weeks later, a note left on my pillow while I slept. Impossible, given the security, unless someone inside the compound had placed it there. The message was simple. We're watching. The boy is not as safe as you think. Jae-sung's reaction was terrifying in its controlled fury. He summoned his entire security team, interrogated each member personally, and increased patrols to a level that made the compound feel more like a prison than a home. But no traitor was found, and the unease only deepened. More notes followed, each more specific than the last. Details about Minho's schedule, his favorite games, the route we took on our walks in the garden. Someone knew our every move, and we couldn't identify how. "It's the Park clan," Hyunwoo reported one evening, his face grim. "They've been rebuilding since we dismantled their operation last year. Word is, they've made an alliance with Chinese traffickers. They want to hurt you in the worst way possible." "By going through Minho," Jae-sung said, his voice deadly quiet. "And through her." Hyunwoo's eyes flickered to me. "Everyone knows about the foreign nurse who tamed the ghost of Gangnam. She's as much a target as the boy." I should have been terrified, and I was, in a way, but not for myself. Every protective instinct I possessed was focused on Minho, on keeping him safe from a threat we couldn't see or predict. "We should leave," I suggested that night, curled against Jae-sung in the darkness of our bedroom. "Take Minho somewhere far away, somewhere no one knows us." "There is nowhere I can hide that they won't eventually find," he replied, his arms tightening around me. "Running only delays the inevitable. I need to end this, permanently." The word hung between us, heavy with implication. I knew what he meant. Knew that ending a Mafia feud required blood and brutality, and things I didn't want to imagine. "What if there's another way?" I asked. "What if you could walk away from all of it?" He was silent for so long I thought he hadn't heard me. Then, "I've considered it. Handing the organization to Hyunwoo, disappearing with you and Minho. Starting over somewhere new. But they wouldn't let me go. Not alive. And even if I managed it, the stain of my past would follow us. Someone would always be hunting us, seeking revenge for old wounds." I pressed my face against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "Then we stay and fight." "We stay," he agreed. "But you don't fight. You stay hidden, protected, until this is resolved. I won't leave Minho's side." "I know." He kissed the top of my head. "That's why you're both going to the safe house tomorrow. Hyunwoo will take you. You'll stay there until I send word that it's over." I wanted to argue, to insist on staying by his side, but I knew he was right. My presence here was a distraction, a vulnerability he couldn't afford. If something happened to me or to Minho, it would destroy him more thoroughly than any enemy could. "Promise me you'll come back to us," I whispered. His hand cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. In his eyes, I saw love and determination, and the shadow of fear he tried so hard to hide. "I promise," he said. "Whatever it takes, I will come back to you." The safe house was a small estate in the mountains of Gangwon Province, isolated and fortified, surrounded by forests that stretched for miles in every direction. Hyunwoo had brought us here in the dead of night, taking a circuitous route designed to throw off any pursuers. Minho didn't understand why we had left home, why his father wasn't with us, why the atmosphere was so thick with tension he could hardly breathe. I tried to maintain our routine, stories, meals, games, but he knew something was wrong. Children always knew. On the 5th day, my phone buzzed with a message from Jae-sung. "Storm is coming. Stay hidden." Trust no one but Hyunwoo. The storm arrived that night. I woke to the sound of gunfire, distant but unmistakable, followed by shouting and the thud of running feet. I grabbed Minho, still half asleep, and pulled him toward the panic room Hyunwoo had shown me on our first day. "Eunice, what's happening?" Minho's voice was small, frightened. "It's going to be okay," I promised, carrying him down the corridor. "We just need to hide for a little while. Can you be very quiet for me?" He nodded, burying his face against my neck. We almost made it. I had the panic room door in sight when a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead of us. A man in black tactical gear, his face hidden behind a mask, a gun leveled at my chest. "The boss sends his regards to Kang Jae-sung," he said in accented Korean. "Hand over the boy." "No." The word came out steady despite the terror coursing through my veins. "I won't let you take him." The man laughed, a cold sound. "You think you have a choice? There are 20 of us and one of you. The security is dead. The backup is pinned down on the main road. No one is coming to save you." He was probably right. Statistically, logically, rationally, I was outmatched in every possible way. I was a nurse, not a soldier. I had never fired a gun in my life. Against trained killers, I should have been helpless. But he had forgotten one thing. I was a mother protecting her child, and that made me the most dangerous creature on earth. I backed slowly toward a side table, my movements casual, unthreatening. The man tracked me with his gun but didn't fire. They wanted Minho alive, which meant they needed me cooperative for now. My hand closed around the heavy ceramic vase I had noticed earlier. Ming Dynasty, Hyunwoo had mentioned, worth a fortune. It would serve a better purpose now. I moved. The vase connected with the man's temple before he could react, shattering into 1,000 pieces. He staggered, and I used the momentum to drive my knee into his groin, sending him crashing to the floor. His gun skittered across the hardwood, and I dove for it, my hands closing around the cold metal. I had never shot anyone before. But when 2 more masked men appeared at the end of the corridor, I didn't hesitate. The recoil nearly knocked me off my feet, but one of them went down, clutching his leg. The other dove for cover. "Panic room!" I screamed at Minho, and he ran. My brave, beautiful boy, running exactly where I had taught him while I provided cover fire with hands that shook like leaves in a storm. The door sealed behind him, just as I ran out of ammunition. I threw the empty gun at the approaching enemy and grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, swinging it like a weapon. I fought like a woman possessed. I took hits that would leave bruises for weeks, absorbed pain that should have dropped me, and kept going on pure adrenaline and desperate love. But there were too many of them. Eventually, they pinned me against the wall, a blade pressed to my throat, and a voice demanded the code to the panic room. "Never," I spat, tasting blood. "I'll die before I let you touch him." "That can be arranged," the man with the knife said. The explosion that followed was so loud it seemed to come from inside my own head. The wall behind my attackers disintegrated in a shower of concrete and flame, and through the smoke emerged a figure I would have recognized anywhere. Jae-sung moved like death incarnate, a gun in each hand, his face a mask of cold fury. He fired with precision that spoke of years of practice, each shot finding its mark with lethal accuracy. The men who had threatened me fell one by one until only silence remained. He crossed to me in 3 strides, hands running over my face, my arms, cataloging injuries with frantic efficiency. "Are you hurt? Where's Minho?" "Panic room," I managed. "Safe. I kept him safe." Something broke in his expression. The controlled facade he always maintained, crumbling into raw, desperate relief. He pulled me into his arms with enough force to bruise, and I felt his entire body shaking against mine. "I thought I'd lost you," he breathed. "When I saw the breach, when I heard shots fired, I thought, I'm okay. I clung to him just as tightly. We're okay. It's over. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Over the following weeks, Jae-sung systematically dismantled the Park clan and their allies. I didn't ask for details and he didn't offer them. Some things were better left in shadow. What I did witness was the man who emerged from the darkness. The father who finally let himself love his son without reservation. The partner who held me every night and thanked me for fighting, for surviving, for choosing him despite everything. On the anniversary of our first meeting, Jae-sung made an announcement that shook the underworld. He was stepping down, transferring leadership of the organization to Hyunwoo, and retiring from the life that had claimed so much from him. For them, he said simply, gesturing to where Minho and I stood watching. For my family. The transition wasn't smooth or peaceful. There were threats, challenges, bloody consequences I tried not to think about. But Hyunwoo was capable, loyal, and determined to honor Jae-sung's legacy while allowing him to walk away. 3 years later, on a spring morning fragrant with cherry blossoms, Jae-sung and I married in a small ceremony at the mountain estate that had once been our safe house. Minho, now 8 years old, walked me down the aisle with the gravity of someone who understood exactly what this moment meant. Yunasi, he whispered, as we reached the altar where his father waited, tears in his ancient, beautiful eyes. Can I call you something else now? My heart clenched. You can call me whatever you want, my love. He smiled, that rare, radiant smile that reminded me so much of his father. Then I want to call you Iyama, because that's what you are. Mother. The word I had never expected to earn, given to me by a child I had never expected to love. I pulled him into my arms, unable to speak past the emotion closing my throat. Over his head, I met Jae-sung's eyes, now warm, now soft, now filled with a peace I had once thought impossible for him. Our family, he said quietly. Our family, I agreed. From a chance encounter in an emergency room, from a wounded child and a wounded man, we had built something beautiful. Not perfect, never safe, not entirely, but ours. And as I took my place beside Jae-sung, with our son between us and our future stretching ahead like an unwritten story, I knew that some journeys were worth every moment of fear and uncertainty along the way. This was where I belonged. This was home. This was love.